I had a question based, Rosh Hashiva, on one of your lectures about a week and a half ago. And the topic is Hashem wants man to...
Can you speak?
Okay, Hashem wants man to complete the world, make it perfect. So, I don't understand what factors are involved. Is it spirituality? Is it altruism? Is it Gashmias, technology? What would constitute perfection in his eyes, I guess? In other words, how can we, what perfection is what?
Is to live a life during which mankind will develop the divine image. Tzelem Elokim. Tzelem Elokim, with it man was created, mentioned at the beginning of the Bible, beginning of Bereshis, means that the human being is not God. God is pure perfection, the highest level of perfection. But he gives the image, the shade of godliness, gives the human being. Which means what's called generally by mankind to reach the pinnacle of saintliness. The human beings, to become saints. Kedoshim means to become saints. But even when Hashem says, you the people of Israel, I've adopted you as my people to become Kedoshim. If you look, it says, Taber kol adat b'nei Yisrael Kedoshim tiyu. You have to strive to become holy. Holy means to become whole, to become complete. It means to become a saint. Kedoshim, the general translation is the saints. How do you do it? It's described also. You do it by fulfilling the Torah, fulfilling whatever Hashem has asked us to do, as much as we can. But if you look carefully, it says, Kedoshim Tziki Kedosh Ani, you've got a divine image. That means you've got within yourself a spark of divinity, and you have to make that spark of divinity to pervade every aspect of your individual life, of your communal life, of your responsibilities, of your family life, of your national life, in every aspect. That's how it's described. But Kedoshim is written without a Vov. That means it's Chaser. Kedoshim Kuf Dalet Shin. Ki Kadosh Ani Kuf Dalet Vav Shin. And this is in the letters of the Tanakh. There's a difference in Malay and Chaser. Only Hashem is absolute. But we can relate to the absolute. So that's in brief. Any other questions? If I want to give the questions.
We were talking about Abraham.
Yes.
Yesterday. God tested Abraham,
yes.
But God already knew the outcome. If he knew the outcome, then why did he test it? And also, Abraham said himself, he says, me and the lad, we shall return. You stay with the donkey, and we'll go and we'll come back. So if Abraham's a prophet, he also knew the outcome. So who was he testing?
So God, this is referred to by the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Akiva says, "Hakol tzafui v'reshut netuna." Everything is foreseen, nevertheless, freedom of will is given. So, it's easy for us to understand that we know some things from the past by looking at a video of what was taken from the past. But We can't see a video of the future, what's going to happen. But Hashem, by whom there's Hayotze Yachad Libam, He created the minds of mankind together, past, present, future. His being is beyond time and space. Beyond time means that for Him, the past, the present, the future are constant. In other words, there's no division of time. Therefore, He knows everything that's going to happen, just that we can know what has happened in the past. So you have an aspect of this, also prophecy. Prophets, they are given from deep down in the in the mind, they are given a vision of what's going to happen in the future. And not only prophets, but sages, they, for example, a dream is 1/6 of the prophecy. It's a well-known fact that in many dreams, many people are able, amongst all the nonsense that comes in the dreams, and also many different images from the past that come in dreams, sometimes they also fall into the dream a vision of what's going to happen in the future. There are those who do deep research in the unconscious mind. They say this: the mind in dreams is also not so much limited by time. And that gives the ability to be able to know what's in the future. The sages say, "Chacham adif min avi." A wise person is greater than a prophet. Who is a wise person? Who sees the future. But there's a big difference. Nolad means he sees that which is going to be born in the future. He sees the birth of what might develop. And therefore he doesn't know it like a prophet who's given, as it were, a vision of what's going to take place in the future, which can also come through the subconscious mind, but on the contrary, through his great conscious mind, which he works on, and reaches a high level and extends it to the maximum, he's able to know what might happen. Best example is given from Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik, you know, was a dreamer. And he had dreams, and the dreams represented, there were some aspects of dreams that represent, like the sages say, Hiru Reili Bo. He really means the subconscious desires of a person come out in dreams. That was part of it. But he also felt that there was some element of prophecy. And that comes out in the whole episode of Yosef. Now, when Yosef interpreted the dreams of Paro, and then what did he do? Hashem, please interpret my dream. So he gave his interpretation, and the wise men, and the magicians surrounding Paro gave their interpretations. And Paro said it didn't satisfy him, because he knew there was something else behind it. When Yosef gave Paro the interpretation of the dreams, it actually fitted the dream more than anybody else. But more than that, Yosef had what seems to be, he was a prisoner, a slave, and everything. He came out just to show he could interpret dreams. And he said, it doesn't come from me, it all comes from Hashem. But then what did he say? He didn't just say, interpreting the dream. He went and told, Vate Yere Paro, now Pharaoh's got to go find Ish Chacham V'Navon. He became the counselor of Paro. Would expected Pharaoh to say, or the minister said, what do you mean? You were asked to interpret the dream, not to come be the main counselor for Paro. He said, Paro's got to find Ish Chacham V'Navon, a wise person who'll make sure that in the days of plenty, they'll prepare for the days of famine. In fact, I read an account of one of the greatest experts in in economic planning for a country, they said the wisdom shown, the economic foresight shown by Yosef in planning for the future, for the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, what fits, and they go into in detail what's said there. It shows enormous chokhmah. And then so Pharaoh said, this is a man, Ein ish chacham kamohu. There's no wise man as much as him. But if you go into deeply, this is the concept of chokhmah. The chacham can foretell the future. That's why today people tell stories about the Gedolim, the great masters of Torah, of all generations, also of our generation. They say they can tell you things that the doctors don't know. They can tell you things, what's going to happen. How do they do it? So people say, oh, they're prophets. No, they do it. It's chacham adif min avi. Through the power of chokhmah, they work out what's likely to happen. And that's even Pharaoh recognized that in Yosef. He said, that's the sort of person we want. I can see from the way he interpreted the dream that surely, and he wasn't, he said, each Asheruach Elokim boy even said he's got to see, certainly this God must be something, the God that gives him such wisdom. But it was wisdom. And what's wisdom? To be able to plan the future. So therefore, the same applies to Avraham Avinu. The whole of the Akedah is in fact, I explained also yesterday, is to demonstrate that the power of prophecy, but it went very much against Abraham's whole life, against all that he knew about Hashem. Hashem was telling him to do this, but he said, I have to fulfill it. And Yitzchak also, even though we don't understand it at all, and didn't understand it. The only reason why I said, Vani Vana, we'll come back, he will withdraw, in order to say it was his hope it would be like that. But he at that time was willing to accept the fact that Hashem wants him to go and kill his son. Any other questions? So it's only fair, I do want to deal with a person who, these are the best questions. It says, Sheilat Chacham Chatzi Teshuva. When a person asks a question, and you can see he's wise. If the question is the question of someone who's wise, it's already half an answer. Now the reason I'm going to choose, and I don't mind at all, people give me questions in writing beforehand, and so one of the students, he gave me in writing, I'll just tell you the main question. The main question is that we know that the basis of Torah is Torah Shebirsav and Torah Shebal Peh. In other words, the Torah Shebirsav is the written word of the Bible, where we say the Chumash is the direct words of Hashem given to Moshe Rabbeinu to write down. That's the highest level of Nevuah. So even the highest level was the Aseret HaDibros, which was to a certain extent Anochi Aleph, the beginning of the divine revelation. But Hashem, in addition to the Aseret HaDibrot, he also gave over all the words of the Torah ad Tumah to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu wrote them down. Then we have the prophets, where we say this was Nevuah. Other words, was not on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, which they had about, these are actual words, but Ko Amar Hashem. The words of Hashem came to the prophets through not such direct, because it's referred to frequently as, is it because of verbal inspiration, or is it a question of the content inspiration? That's more the content, Ko Amar Hashem. The prophets are introduced generally, these are the words which were said by the prophet Yirmiyahu from Hashem, or the prophet Yeshayahu. So it's Ko Amar Hashem. It's given also with more imagery included, with a vision. And these are the words of the prophets. Then we have the Divrei Ketuvim, which also contain the prophecies of Daniel, very important also for the future, and many other actual prophecies of David HaMelech, brought in Tehillim. But these are concerned, they're called, these were given Ruach HaKodesh, with the Holy Spirit on a high level, and they're also holy writings, Kitvei Kodesh. In addition to that, then we have the Torah Shebaal Peh. The oral tradition, the basis of it was given concurrently, first with Moshe Rabbeinu, given over to him already, the basis of Torah Shebaal Peh, including also the 13, which are developed in the 32 principles of halachic and Akkadic tradition, mentioned in the Midrashim and the Zohar. There were also the roots of which were given to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then it was passed on to the sages, and the sages, passed on to the prophets. The prophets also had the Torah Shebaal Peh, which are some things which are not written down but were revealed to them, and then later given to the Chachamim of each generation. That even started concurrently with the establishment of the 70 elders by Moshe Rabbeinu. The 70 elders were also, they were given the ability to go and use both traditions that they had, generation after generation, concerning the elements of Torah Shebaal Peh. The base of Torah Shebaal Peh is that it was given over to the greatest scholars who have preserved the ancient traditions or the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, as well as the development which comes through the midot. In the morning we say the 13 midot. These 13 midot are extended by Rabbi Yossi Aglili, one of the great Tanaim, into 32 midot. And these were the ways which were used by the sages to develop the Torah and apply it to all situations. These midot, some of them are based upon traditions. What's it? Generation after generation. Gezerah Shava is all based upon tradition. But the majority of them are based upon principles of using the human mind, extending as much as possible, according to specific logical rules. And also the limitation of those logical rules are also given by tradition. So for example, if you say in the morning, just start with the first ones of Rabbi Ishmael Omer, Mikal v'chomer, u'b'gzeira shov me'binyan av. Kal v'chomer is based upon logic, to go and make an argument that if certain laws apply in a weak situation, they will certainly apply in a stronger situation. So they also here there's certain logical limitations, known as dayon, but let's go into the detail of that. Then you have Gezerah Shava, which is a comparison of similar words, key words. But the key words you have to know by tradition, and thereby you can learn one passage, one aspect of the Torah from a different aspect. Gezerah Shava goes further, because there's also a more limited form of Gezerah Shava, which is based upon the investigation of key words throughout the Tanakh, which is a way whereby you find out what a word really means, which we've used quite a lot, but based upon the traditional writings. And then you have Binyan Av, means the way of the Torah, when it's written, is that it gives us, in many instances, not an overall ruling, but an illustration. The illustration, let's say, the laws of damages. So we have in the Torah, Arba Avot Nezikin, 4 major principles of types of damage, where you have to give different types of penalties and compensation in different ways. So these are Arba Avot, and it's a binyan av to everything is similar. For example, if a day what happens does damage with a car, so you can learn out binyan av. You've got a certain principle mentioned in the Torah with regard to if a person kindles a fire and it goes and produces damage, so there's also different. It doesn't only apply to a fire, it also applies just to other situations, to machinery. It can be the same, because that's use of binyan av, you make a principle. And that applies to all situations. When the Torah says, for example, on Shabbat, you mustn't kindle a fire, it doesn't just apply to a fire made out of matches or of flints, sometimes flints, which is used in Egypt frequently, which is a type of lighter that we have today. There's a flint lighter, which is made with, where there's plenty of them were found in Egypt. These are the ones that were used then to kindle a fire, but the same applies. You kindle a fire through matchsticks, or you kindle a fire through producing electrical sparks which kindle a fire. So there are many different, so that's using binyan av. From something mentioned, you extend it to other cases. Many cases are brought in the Gemara, and of course many cases are brought in the responsa that developed the concept of the Gemara. Now, amongst the traditions we have Moshe Kibbel Torah Messina, and then we have the ethics of the fathers, and that is said there, obviously, because if you look carefully at the order of the ethics of the fathers, then it begins. It begins with the words of Shimon HaTzadik, who was the end of the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. The Torah was given by tradition of Moshe to Yeshua, to the Zakenim, to the Nevi'im to the men of the Great Assembly that included prophets. This includes not just the tradition of laws, but the tradition of ethics. And that the ethics of the fathers demonstrates to us the vital importance of morality in life, many different ways. And it's very deep. It also includes the 48 ways whereby you can apply the Torah. It also says there that if a person studies the Torah in the right manner, Magalin lo Razei Olam, the secrets of the world are revealed to him. And where there are many hints in Pirkei Avot, as well as all through the ancient Talmudic tradition, also of the Mishnah, also the Mishnah Chagiga, which speaks about this, that we shouldn't think that the Torah is only concerned with open wisdom. Because if you look at the Chumash even, there's a description of how Hashem revealed himself to Moshe. And the 30 qualities, when he reveals him the 30 qualities of behavior, or the qualities of Hashem, which are also qualities of human behavior. And there describes things which are mystical. You can't exclude mysticism from prophecy. What's prophecy? Revelations from Hashem. So, there's many ways Hashem reveals himself. But he also revealed himself, the highest way was the revelation of Sinai. And then he obviously revealed himself to individuals all the way through the Tanakh. So he revealed his wisdom. He often revealed his wisdom for specific purposes in order to describe things that might happen in the future, like happened with Daniel. So he revealed himself things that are mentioned in mystical language, certainly. So mysticism has been part of the original Bible. You go into many different sections, like the first chapter of Yechezkel is completely mystical, where he speaks about the Masa Merkava, the chariot of Hashem. What does the chariot of Hashem mean? So it obviously means something very, very deep. But there was a principle, as is described in the Mishnah, the Chagiga. This is called Masa Merkava and Masa Bereshit also. When we read through the Chumash, I used to say in my shul, I said that for quite a few times, I said that the Jewish understanding of the Torah is unfortunately suffering from juvenile paralysis. Like, in other words, whatever we learn from when we're youngsters, that remains with us for the whole of our lives. We think the way in which children read about the Garden of Eden, and how we understand it, you know, there was man and woman, and a snake that spoke, and so on. It's all a very nice story. Story the whole world knows it. But when you grow up, you've got to try and understand it, and you see it's more deeper and deeper and deeper. depth of it, how it was known, understood by people who reached the highest level, understanding the whole of Torah and the whole of its other tradition, and therefore was always kept esoteric. This means it's hidden. It's kept hidden on purpose. Because if you open up it, if you teach a child anything missing, you just confuse him. It causes great harm. The child has to understand it. You should see how the great men of literature, how they love the fairy tales that are brought in the Chumash and so on. They like this very fantastic literature. But thereby they even distort it. Therefore, it's kept hidden. Like even the Torah Shebal Peh was kept to some extent hidden. It was not allowed to be written down. Even the halachic aspect of the Torah, there was a prohibition to write them down. To write them down, then people who've not been initiated, don't understand the depth of Torah, they read the Bible, and they go in other ways, which is the origin of Christianity. They also based themselves on the Septuagint, but it was distorted because they didn't accept the oral tradition. And today, we see what an enormous threat it is. We've got Islam also based upon the Torah of Moses, and see what they've done with it. Yeah? They threatened to destroy the whole world. Certainly want to destroy Israel with it. See what distortions you can get to. You go and make murder holy. And that is why it was kept not to be translated. Don't go. But the oral tradition was to a great extent even not known to them in halakha. But now to go, certainly the mystical tradition did not become known, was only to be taught, it says in the Mishnah, to people who have a deep understanding and a high level of saintliness. There's even whole sections in the Talmud Bavli and the Yerushalmi concerning the name of Hashem and what conditions are required for a person to understand what it means and even to pronounce it. So this is the aspect people say that many of the esoteric traditions were written down later, and they are to be found in the Zohar. In later times, the Zohar's exposition by the Arizal. No. It's quite true that the early generation don't know it. And it comes out, and why do I deal with this question now? It's a very good opportunity to deal with this question. The Chinuch, for example, he does, in his description of the mitzvot, he goes to the roots of the mitzvot. Now, it may be also the Chinuch even knew a lot of the more secret aspects of Torah, but didn't think it was suitable to give them over to youngsters. And the Sefer HaChinuch was a book which he wrote specifically for people who are young, and they have their questions, why do we have these mitzvot? What lies behind them? You say, I've got to keep them, why? Because he follows the education, it's called Sefer HaChinuch, education. The education is not the person, you go and tell a person that what's the Torah? Torah is a way of life. So he's given the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and tell him to fulfill it. First he says, why? Why should I do it? Why this mitzvah? Why that? So therefore he says, there's a reason for everything. And he gives reasons and tries to solve the reasons rationally. So I'm going to take the example since we started this series on the Chinuch, on the understanding or counting the Omer, on the basis of the Chinuch. The Chinuch said, what's the root of the mitzvah? So he gives a beautiful example, a person who's in prison, is waiting for time to get out of prison, and therefore he counts the days till he can get out. So in order to demonstrate that fact that the people of Israel, when they went out from Egypt, they knew, what, we're just going in the desert? They knew the whole purpose of going out from Egypt was to receive the Torah. And therefore they looked forward to it. And they counted the days from the beginning. They knew, oh, Hashem has released us from the terrible sufferings of Egypt, but He's promised us He's going to make us His people. So therefore we have to count the days up to that time. Like a person, we're still under the influence of what happened in Egypt. And therefore we've got to work on ourselves in order to increase our desire to receive the Torah. And this fits in very well with the text of the Chumash, which says, the people came out with a high hand on a high level. But then, even they reached the fantastic level of Zekeli Valvehu, you see, even the lowest maidservant saw Hashem. What happened afterwards? War with Amalek. What happened afterwards? They cried to Hashem, we don't have water. What's going to happen? They got them on. They were put through so many tests in that short period between Exodus from Egypt and giving the Torah, and they complained and they had to get over it. And it says, even the Chumash, the purpose of all this was, L'man anaseno. I want to give them tests to see if they're really fit to receive the Torah. If they're really fit to reach the level to fulfill the mission of the people of Israel to become a kingdom of priests, of teachers, of morality and divinity, and a holy nation in themselves. So then they can receive the Torah. So to do that, the Am Yisrael were put through the mill, through terrible difficulties. They were put in the desert, they had no more food left. So what's going to happen? We're going to die? Hashem brought them the man. So therefore Hashem says this, the man, if you look carefully, is a teaching. The man and Eseno is to test them, are they going to follow my Torah to thick and thin? Are they going to recognize that the material exodus from Egypt, to take off from slavery of Egypt, was to bring you to become the servant of Hashem, freely. Accept. And that's the first introduction to the Decalogue. They said, Anuchi Hashem Elokecha, I'm your God, I took you out from Egypt to become my servants. That's the basis. Don't think they only took you from Egypt to become an independent nation and do what you want. Before you were a slave to Egypt, and now you're a slave to materialism. Enslaved to materialism. You enslaved even to cruelty and to evil in order just to fulfill your greed. No. I freed you. I didn't free you from Egypt, slavery. Then afterwards, you should just enter into the rat race of materialistic life, trying to outdo your fellow men. No, what's got to remember, I made you a slave in Egypt and gave all the suffering that you should all your life as a nation think of those who don't have freedom and those who are suffering and help them. You're here to help others, not just to help yourself to become more and more of an egoist. So that's Sfirat Omer according to the Chinuch. Yeah? But there are a lot of questions. The Yifet asked the question. In that case, the counter should be the reverse. It's a major question, one of me. He said, when you start counting from being a prisoner to becoming free, you say, look, there's another, you count like this, you don't count 1, 2, 3. No, you say there's another 48 days, 47 days. You count down, make a down count to get out of Egypt and to become a free person. You count the other way around. You count 1, 2, 3. So he gives the Chinuch gives also an answer to that. He said because if you start with a large number, the number itself will frighten you. Like I gave also an explanation psychologically. If you've got to go mountaineering and you see you've got to go up so and so many steps, you say, I won't do it. Or what's going to happen to you? Let's say in America, and you've got to see somebody where there's no Shabbos elevator, and you've got to see somebody who's on the 60th floor. So you'd say, I'm not starting to go. How can this? I'm not going. I can't do it. But it's very important. You've got to see that person on the 60th floor. So how do you do it? You say, let me just try a few floors. Okay. So you go up to the 50th floor, you manage. By 50th floor, you collapse. Yeah. So take a rest. Okay, take a good rest. And say to yourself, well, I've done 15. That's quite an achievement. So if someone accompanying you and say, try it again. Yeah, let's try again. So in the end, you will get there. But you've got to start by not looking up, looking down. Like he also mountaineering. As a lad, also I was in the Swiss Alps. I enjoyed the challenge of trying to climb a mountain with a chaver. Yeah. So also let's give it a try how far we can go. So it was pretty difficult, but still went to a certain place, took a good rest, tried a bit further. We didn't get to the top. That decided it's too risky. But still, that's how you have. But the way the mountaineers will do it, they'll take a few steps up against the Himalayas, but then they make you stop. How they do it, they say, but they take courage. They don't look upwards, they look down. Look where I am already. I already see miles and miles everywhere. It's a fantastic view. Let's go and enjoy this view and get courage. Take a rest. Look what you've done, then you just go further. Yeah? But if you're going to try and go do more than you've got to try an assessment, how much can I do? So I'm now rested and I've seen what I've done. Let me try another 10 steps. So that's the way of the chinuch, if you look into it. But the truth is, I'll just give this example I'm going to bring, that I'm going to bring it from someone who was a master of the Tanakh, he knew every word of the Tanakh in his mind, and a master of all the words of Chazal and Midrashim, and a master also of the Kabbalistic writings that have been written. Now, the date of the Zohar is in dispute when it was printed, but the sayings in the Zohar are attributed to the Tanaim. The Tanaim even say many of them were revelations of Eliyahu Navi, and the revelations of Eliyahu Navi are mentioned dozens of times in the Gemara, Talmud Bavli and Yerushalmi, many times, to different people. So there's something would go to the deal. Then there's also the most ancient Kabbalistic traditional work is not the Zohar, it's the Sefer Yetzirah, called the Book of Creation, which is an analysis of the Hebrew language, grammatically and at the deepest level. It gives an insight and understanding of what lies behind it. It says the world was created with the letters of the alphabet, and then it's also mystical. The basis of some of the mystical teachings are there. And the base of the Sefer Yetzirah attributes to Avraham Avinu. And there are certain factors between the Sanskrit traditions which are attributed to the Brahmas. The Brahmas, some say, goes back to Avraham Avinu. And there's a reference that it says even that Avraham Avinu, he said, Livnei Pilachim, Asher Avraham Natan Lehem Matanot. That Avraham Avinu gave presents to the sons he had from Keturah, from the Pilachim, from the concubines. He sent them to the east, to the far east, it says. And the traditional explanation of the Midrash, which all of the Tzada'im is, that he sent them guides on the spiritual world, what it was all about. And therefore, one of the greatest geniuses in more recent times, he was a teacher of Rav Samson Fol Hirsch, called Chacham Bernai. He, in fact, most people say, he wrote a book in which he made an identification of the Sanskrit traditions, going back to the traditions of Avraham Avinu, to understand the mysteries of the world, which were distorted in many different ways, but nevertheless contain elements of truth, which is found in the most ancient mystical traditions, and goes back to Avraham Avinu. And that Sefer is mentioned frequently in the Gemara. Even says somebody, how far does the Gemara go with mysticism? It says that one of the Tzaddim, he created a human being with the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the most remarkable mention. So therefore, remarkable mystical statements mentioned in the Gemara. The Gemara, which we do, Talmud, Bavli, and Yerushalmi, are filled with near-death experiences. Now there is there's two questions. When did the actual manuscript of the Zohar appear? So there are different records. Yep, there's no manuscript extant of the Zohar from the time of the Tanaim. But we do have, but that's obvious, they didn't want to, it wasn't allowed to be written down. It was only allowed to be passed on by tradition, not written down. Even the oral tradition, even the early Mishnayot, there's also very few manuscripts. because there was a law, Devarim shebichtav, you shouldn't say Baal Peh, and Devarim sheBaal Peh you shouldn't write down. They just wrote down notes sometimes. Megillah Tanit, they were allowed to write down the scroll of the calendar, when you can have days of mourning, when days of feasts, that they're allowed to be written down, because it's so important for every Jew to know wherever he is. But the other Mishnah had to be learned by heart. You had to know it by heart, which explains the side of the Mishnah. It was only written down later. Some people even say, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he compiled it, but still, some say he did not allow it to be written down. Only a few generations later, when there was a huge dispersion of Jews all over the world, then they wrote it down. And they say, the Vilna Gaon, and also Nosson Adler the same, once they'd learned the Torah Shebaal Peh, the Mishnayos and the Gemara and the Midrashim by heart, they would not, from then onwards, they would not write down. They wouldn't write it down. And they used to know it by heart, and think it by heart, and the Vilna Gaon in his latest days, in front of him, he always had the Tanakh. Because the Tanakh you're not supposed to say by heart, you have to look in the text. Why? Because each letter is important. But when it comes to Gemara, the oral tradition, it's not the letter that counts. You've got to know what it says, you've got to understand it. No point a person just reading the Gemara, see this, to read the Gemara and not understand it, you're not fulfilling the learning of Gemara, if you don't know what it means at all. But if you read the Tanakh, each word is holy, each word contains depth to each, that's where the text is sacrosanct. So this is, and I'll tell you, of all the Sfarim that I know of, let's say, the Vilna Gaon, what's written down, they are, I mean, I don't know of any scholar who has produced the chain from the words of the Tanakh, the Chumash and the Nach, and extending it, now understanding the hints which exist in the oral tradition, both halachically, halachic aspects belong by many people, but certainly in all the Aggadot, to show how the Aggadot are connected with the words of the Tanakh, and then the words of the Zohar, to understand them, how they are mentioned in the words of the Gemara, and or even with different language. And also in the word Arizal, that goes even further. He also quotes him sometimes. Now he's careful always to try to explain any concept of the Zohar in terms of what's written in the Chumash or what's said by the sages in the Gemara. And therefore, I know that some people say, well, there's Gnostic influences and there's Christianity. No, because that's the dividing line. The Christians, they ignore the traditions of the people of Israel. But the mystical tradition has been very strong, and some say it's going to become more revealed before the Mashiach comes. And we know that of late, although the greatest mystics, even in our time, are probably those who keep it quiet. Like I happen to know, when he became more known after his death, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was one of the greatest poskim of recent times. But I know that at night, and people know about it, he studied Kabbalah and knew it very well. It was a high level Makubal. Rav Elyashiv, whom I had the zchus to know till he could no longer give a shiur, which was over 100, but I knew him very quite well. I was at the zchus to be close to him. I used to get up from the yeshiva to listen to shiur and participate, and I asked him many questions. He was a grandson of the greatest Makubal amongst the disciples who followed the traditions of the Gaon of Vilna. It's called the Leshem Shebabachom. In his most modest apartment, when I first went to him, he was just so modest, the apartment, but it was filled with Sfarim all the way around, everywhere. There's one picture up, the picture of his grandfather, the Leshem. And the Leshem was a very holy man, a very big Talmud Chacham, and he wrote his Sifrei Kabbalah Leshem. He had his picture there. Why? Because he was his disciple also. The grandfather was a famous Rav, who founded also here when he came to Shalayim, the Hamel Rav Hamel, and here he gave also a daily shiur to, not just to yeshiva people, Balabatim, and that shiur was carried on by Rav Eliashiv till he couldn't give a shiur anymore. And I tell him in the last shiur. And the shiur that he gave was at the highest level, also useful, over 100, with sharpness and with humor. It's a fantastic shiur. But he knew the Kabbalah also, but he didn't want anybody to know about it. But he knew the Leshem. If you understand the Leshem is such a deep Kabbalist, his books have been spread. We see they know them. But these forum, if you pick them out, you don't know what they're talking about. If anybody here will pick up a Zohar and look at it, you won't understand it. And people have gone astray. In fact, the Sulam, who was the greatest scholar in recent times, the greatest commentary on the Zohar made in recent times, the Sulam, I had the schools to know by his son. So the Sulam, he had many disciples, but one of his disciples went astray. He knew the Zohar, and then he is the one who's founded Kabbalah centers all over the world, which is very attractive to film stars and other people. It was open to non-Jews and Jews, and it was not in accordance with Torah tradition. So it can easily be distorted. So when people start reading the Zohar, they go wrong. They can go wrong. One has to have a person more reliable, but we know today human beings of any spiritual aspect to their character, they're looking for mysticism. And therefore, it is a fantastic tool to use in Kirov. I've had many students who said, I only want to learn this. I come from TM, Trans Meditation, other one comes from the Kabbalah Center. They say, look, do you teach it there? Yes, I'll say, I'll introduce you to it. The Baal HaTanya is based on Kabbalah also, with the Tanya, Chassidus. Chassidus has in it, the Torah Chassidus has in it also strong elements from the Zohar that are ever made more easy for people, even without background in mastery of Tanakh or mastery of Gemara, to be able to appreciate. And therefore, it's a good tool in Kirov, and it's quite authentic, but you have to know how to deal with it. And there are many people who will say, even people who do deal with it, but they keep it a secret. They say, only Asek B'Nistarot, they say, I don't deal with it, because there's so much distortion. In fact, one of the major Kabbalists of today is Yaakov Hillel, who was also was my student years ago, and he has even written books, Faith or Folly, to try and warn people not to be caught in the follies that come from following Kabbalah when you're not ready for it. So you have to know when, how to take it. Now, I found Rabbi Tzadok is very good, and that's what I want to end with now, just this illustration. He brings a concept, which I brought already last time, of how to explain the Maharal Shabbat. Why did it say by Pesach, in connection with counting the Omer, it says that Pesach even took place in the week, is called Shabbos, which it is. That was the dispute between the Roshim and the Tzedukim. Tzedukim says that the moral of the Shabbos is Sunday. So there you've got to start counting from Sunday, which is also most likely the origin of the Christian Sabbath being on Sunday. Because the Christians, as it was developed, they were more attracted by the Sadducees, who in any case did not believe in the oral tradition. And the Christians also not. Paul in Christianity didn't accept all the mitzvahs either. And therefore Christianity became attractive also to Sadducees, So therefore they made the Sabbath on the Sunday, because also they say Sunday is called the Sabbath. Where? By Pesach, counting the Omer. But that's not the true Peshat. The question is, why is it called, by counting the Omer is it called the Sabbath? So we explained already in the last year, that's from Rabbi Tzadok, it's from the Zohar, it's the concept, Shabbat and Yom Tov are contrasts. Shabbat is fixed, is a fixed holiness that comes every seventh day since creation of man, until today. So that's the Shabbat, even straight off creation. So that carries on, fixed. But Yom Tov is fixed by the people of Israel, it's changeable. Shabbat is very fixed by Hashem. The Yom Tov is fixed by the people of Israel, when it should take place. And also, Israel have to come with their inner holiness. They've got to sanctify. That's why we say, Mekadesh Yisrael Vazmanim. Hashem made Israel holy, and that made the times holy. But the Shabbat, Hashem made holy directly, Mekadesh Shabbat. So that's, so you see here how the Zohar is really and the Rav Dessler follows that. Rav Dessler was also very wide in his approach. Of course, he gives many different essays here and there to made into one system. But he followed Rabbi Tzadok a great deal in all his writings. To understand the essence of the unity of Torah, the unity between Musa and Chasidus comes as a result of this. The unity between Musa and Halacha, that everything comes from one source. Both Halacha, practice what to do, and also how to develop saintliness, Musa, and how to develop the character of the nation, to introduce spirituality into the life of the nation. So this is all united, and briefly with sources. Once you go to if you look at Rabbi Tzadok's writings on the surface, it's not so simple. But these days we're fortunate, people have worked on getting all these sources. In the original books, the editions that they used to have didn't give the sources. But today you can work with the sources, and it makes such a unity. Like in this question, no question that this is, if you go into deeply, the answer to counting the Omer. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No. Again, for next year, bring all your questions at the beginning. I'll try and deal with them.